Woo! What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Start Thinking Forward show. This episode is electrifying. We're gonna talk about empowering you to take your business and life to the next level. I'm your host, as usual, Brandon L. Draper, better known as the Motivational King. And today, I'm telling you, hold on to your earbuds, folks, because today the Start Thinking Forward podcast is about to serve you a triple shot of business wisdom, leadership, finesse, and actionable insight. We're going to meet Miss Diane Hellbig. So, Diane, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you to the Thinking Forward show today?
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. I'm a business advisor and trainer, have been for about 17 years on my own. And I like to say that my goal, I am on a mission to improve the world one business at a time by getting people to change their behavior in business. And I got here through an outreach on Podmatch.
Okay. So, Diane, you talk about, succeeding without selling. And that's kind of like the biggest premise that you have. Selling, succeeding without selling in a traditional sense. Can you dive into the psychological triggers that make your approach more effective than the conventional sales tactics?
Sure. Thank you. I would love to. So there's so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
Right? So people don't like salespeople because historically salespeople try and convince them and talk them into buying something that they may or may not need. So people are instantly resistant to even be approached by a salesperson. At the same time, most people don't like engaging in those behaviors, those sales behaviors. So they either do it reluctantly and poorly, or they don't do it at all. And so they don't grow. Their business doesn't grow. They aren't successful. They're constantly challenged. They don't like to network. We have this this fear of people saying no, and yet we engage in behaviors that pretty much guarantee people are going to say no. It makes no sense to me at all, but we do it because that's how we were trained.
So what do you that's about? Do you think that that's a learned behavior, or that's just societal, people just nervous? When I was in sales, the biggest thing that everyone would get on is you got to get on the phone, you got to make calls. But, I had a guest the other day and I was like, this thing here turns into a monster when you have to make a sale, and in the insurance industry, finance industry, if you're getting paid commission and it's that, the beginning of the month and you got to go write some business, people can smell that off you. You have to make this or I'm not going to pay mortgage, right? I'm not going to make my mortgage this month. So I got to go out here and make 3 sales. And I've been in situations in the past where I got to buy leads. So I'm in this sales frenzy. Hey, I got obligations and responsibilities in the next few weeks. So I'm going with a different level of aggression. Sometime it worked. Oftentimes it didn't. I mean, I heard stories where, people be so desperate to make a sale, they knock on someone's door, the person opens the door, they're talking, the person says, I'm not interested, and they're closing the door, the person puts their foot in the door and say, hold on, I got more to say. Yeah. So give me some insight on that. Give me some insight on that, Dan.
Okay, so I believe that this is how we've been trained over the years. That those tactics were successful for someone. And so that's what they have continued to teach people. And back in the 1980s, before the internet, people were really at the mercy of salespeople because we didn't have a way of gathering information on our own. And salespeople knew it. So the salesperson's job was to really understand their product or service and walk in the door and explain it in a way that the buyer would go, oh, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And it was up to the salesperson to be providing that information. Well, people didn't like it then. They really don't like it now because people like to buy. They just don't like to be sold. So, and salespeople have to get out of this mindset of, I need this, because the truth is the buyer doesn't care. And as you said, they can smell it. When you come in with that desperation, they're immediately turned off because what they're hearing is you're more concerned about yourself than you are about helping them solve a problem. And sales really is about connecting a solution to a problem. If you can do it, it'll make sense to everybody. If you can't, you gotta say, I can't, and you have to walk away. My belief is when you let go of this whole focus on selling and you just think about, and you get real curious and you think, I just want to learn as much as I can about the people I meet and figure out how they fit in my world. And for the ones that fit as potential clients, I want to continue to learn as much as I can. And from that learning, if I think I can help them, I will tell them. And they will be able to hear that from me because I started by listening and learning, not by telling. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. It absolutely does. So the next question, I was writing some notes here. So what would you say to a young entrepreneur? Because I'm at that pivotal age now where I'm old enough to understand the older generation, how things were done back in the day. And then I'm also young enough where I understand the new ways of doing things. Yeah. So what would you tell the young entrepreneur that's on the other side of this conversation that may be saying to themselves, well, yeah, I do want to understand the psychology of sales, but I'm in a situation right now that I just have to sell because when I'm hearing this, and this comes with experience, I know what you're talking about makes sense, right? But I know the younger entrepreneur might like, well, I don't have time right now. And oftentimes the things that you say you don't have time for are the things you really need to have time for. So what would you tell that young entrepreneur right now to saying, I hear you, Diane, I hear you. I really want to adopt that. But right now I have to be in the sales. I have to sell stuff or I'm going to be out of business. What would you tell them right now about this philosophy and why it's so important?
So I would tell them two things. The first thing I would say is, please understand that while you're in that mode and you are engaging with people the way that you are engaging, you are losing opportunities to build relationships with people who could be really impactful in your world. And, they say you get one chance to make a first impression. So pay attention to that. If the impression that you're making is you're a salesman, it's going to be really hard to undo that. So you could be missing out on client opportunities because of the way you're showing up. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I'm not saying you have to wait. I'm saying change your tactics. So any business owner, any young entrepreneur should be doing their research. They should know what a good client looks like, what an ideal client looks like, and they should be gathering target market information, making a list. I wouldn't necessarily buy lists, but if you're going to, okay, you're still going to have to do research on that list and understand you're going to be whittling that list down based on what an ideal client looks like. So you're not going to try and shoehorn people or companies into looking like, a good resource. Do as much research as you can, because and learn as much as you can about them, because then when you do your outreach, you have something to talk to them about that's connective for them. They'll realize that you're not just dialing for dollars, that you're really interested in engaging with them. And there are a lot of things that you can do to get warm introductions. It depends on who your target audience is. Sales, the way I look at it is there's things you have to do. The question is, how are you going to do them? So sales is a verb, right? It's an activity. You can't wait for people to call you. You're going to be doing relationship building and all of those things. And do your prospecting research, do your prospecting outreach, talk to people. When you talk to them, you actually want to be asking them questions and listening before you say anything. And what I would say to anybody is, what you will find is you will be developing the right relationships. You will be gaining the right business that will be profitable. It will be good for both parties. It's where referrals come from. It's where sustainable business comes from. And you will be able to, you'll get into a pattern. You'll be able to continue that behavior over and over again, and it'll serve you much better.
I believe so. So, I was recently had a talk, and what came up in the conversation was, I don't know if you have read this book, but it's a book by Dr. Thomas Stanley. It's called How to Network with Millionaires and Their Affiliates. And one of the things that Dr. Thomas Stanley talks about in the book is that do what other people that sell won't. And it sounds a lot like, what you're talking about here is this idea of, let's give an example. Like, let's say an insurance agent, right? They typically go to a business once or twice a year, see if there's new employees. It's called open season, right? When open season comes out, it's time for them to see if there's new employees that they can sign up for insurance or whatever products or services they're selling. So it's usually a phone call to the business owner. Hey, I want to come by Thursday, Friday, or whenever. Business owner says yes. They come up, they sign people up, and they go about their business. And that's one way of doing business. It's one-sided. And Dr. Thomas Stanley, he talks about this idea where, hey, listen, instead of doing that, let me find out the concerns. Let me find out what ails this industry, and let me talk about it. Let me speak about it. Let me write about it. Matter of fact, let me go as far as writing a congressman and say, hey, look, there's some legislation getting ready to come down. I don't like it. I don't think it's going to help this business. And this is a client of mine. It's going to affect my business. And then you send that to that CEO, that owner of that company, and you say, listen, I don't know if anyone's concerned about this, but I am. And I'm letting you know that I got your back, and this is what we're doing about it. That business owner is going to be more inclined to want to do continuous business with you, because now it's not just a transactional. Because I always ask people that question: is this a transactional relationship or just a relationship relation? It's like, are we really trying to build something, or is it just as long as I compensate you or whatever? And you're talking about building, cultivating relationships, right?
Yes, right. Because it's really about, I love what you were just talking about. It really is about caring about your clients and continuing to learn about them as time goes on. What so many people do is they think it's transactional. They make the sale, they move on. Okay, well, that's not really sustainable. It's very dangerous, because your competition is contacting them. And if someone else is courting them, like, think about it like dating, right? If you're dating someone, but you're not really taking care of her, and someone else comes along and she could go over there, right? Yeah. To the person who cares about her, because people want to feel valued. They want to feel like you care about them and helping them solve problems.
You kind of paused a little bit there. Are you back? Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, a little technical difficulty there. All right, we're back.
Sort of the story of my life. So, but do you see what I'm talking about? That the more we continue to learn about our clients and continue to help them, the more valuable we are to them.
Okay. I agree. The next question I have for you is kind of the idea. I know you emphasize a lot on the tailor-made strategies for each client. And I think, we live in this microwave society today where everyone wants to put everything as a template. And I would throw caution in, and you've done that graciously through a lot of your reading the stuff that you've actually written about, and I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. We're going to get into that later. But at the same time, it seems like you always emphasize this idea that each client is different, have their own different set of needs, requirements, and when you talk about court, they want to be courted in their own way. And if you don't know how to do that, it can lead to problems. How does understanding, the psychology of this individual approach contributes to the effectiveness of these strategies?
So this, if you think about yourself, like we all know this, we think about ourselves. We want to feel like we matter. We want to feel like we're being heard. We want to feel like we motor in the world based on our history, our experiences. Everybody does. So what we want to realize as salespeople is that's part of what we want to learn. We want to learn what matters to the other person. We want to learn what their triggers are, what their fears are, and it's usually based in previous experience or someone they know's previous experience that has been shared with them. Because when we understand that, we can have that conversation with them. We can let them know, I hear you. This is what I think I'm hearing. Rest assured that is not where we're going with this. However that conversation happens, that's what builds trust. So it also gives us the opportunity to identify if the person we're talking to is not a worthwhile client for us to pursue, and then we can walk away. So there's a lot there. I think what so many people do is they cookie cutter. They just say, here's our solution. Here's how it's going to help you. And all the prospect feels is, you didn't listen to a word I said. And I've seen people do it. I have sat in sales meetings where they've asked all the questions. They've taken all the notes. The prospect was really open. And then they went back and they slapped it right into their standard template and shot it off to the client. And the client was like, whoa, or the prospect, they're like, did you listen to a word I said? I spent an hour with you, right? Mm-hmm. Talk about feeling disrespected.
Exactly. And I know that would lead to less sales. Do you think that where do you think things are geared to today? Like, do you think we're going back to the ideas of people really care more about brands, people are more involved with brands, or is it just, hey, I'm willing to take whatever comes my way? What do you think as far as sales, where things are leveraging? Because, times are changing. We're in a different climate right now. So what do you think about that?
I think that it's always an evolution. And that what we have to remember as salespeople is the person we're talking to wants their problem solved. They want to feel valued. And we are the experts in our industry. So when we show up genuinely interested, genuinely curious, I think that never goes away. I think there is real value in there. Some of the questions we're going to ask have to do with that. Like, what is your main priority? What matters most to you? And when they tell us, then we have to address it, right? We may not be the best solution for them. Okay. But at least we've heard, we've told them, we've moved on. The respect is built. A lot of people say that this younger generation, they just want quick fixes. They just want the transaction. They don't want to, okay, maybe, guess what? They're going to continue to age. They're going to continue to grow. That's going to change. Different things matter to people in different stages of their life and different stages of their business. Our job is to continue to learn about where they are and what's going on with them and what matters to them. And if we can meet it, we meet it. If we can't, we tell them. That's one of the biggest keys to this. You don't listen to them on price and then say, okay, great, I'll lower my price. You say, talk to me about that. Tell me, what's that value proposition? I mean, I think there's questions you can ask to really get to what really matters to somebody. And then we have to be able to say whether that's us or not.
Mhm. Now, can you help me understand the concept? And I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but I doubt if I'm the only one.
What
So
is it?
there's this saying that says that it's never about the money. And I'm like, okay, it's like I understand what that means,
Mhm.
but I don't, because I oftentimes feel like sometimes when it has been an issue, like, I presented a price to a client and it seemed like it was about the price. Like it was like
Uh-huh.
it's
Uh-huh.
the price. But Grant Cardone, I'm a big Grant Cardone fan,
Yeah.
10x. And I'm saying, no, Grant says it's never about the price, it's never about the price. Is
Yeah.
that true? Is that a true way to look at it? Is it never about the price? It's about how you're delivering it, maybe how you're asking the question. Is it the salesperson, or is it something else? Or is it, like he said, it's never about the money, it's something else?
So he's right. It's never about price. Sorry. It's about the value.
Uh-huh.
So when people react to price, it's because they haven't connected the value to the investment. And that's on the salesperson, in my opinion. I think the salesperson has not asked enough questions to help the prospect identify what really matters. So this might help you out with this. I have 2 questions I think every salesperson should ask. And the first one is, please share with me what it will mean for you or your business, depending on who you're talking to, when you move forward with this, whether it's with me or someone else. Okay. So I use the word when. What we're doing is we're getting them to articulate what buying this, whatever, how that's going to impact them or their business. Okay. What is it going to do? What is the impact going to be? The second question is, what will the impact be if you don't? Because once again, you're getting them to actually say out loud, well, we won't be able to do this, or we may have to let people go, or whatever. That tells you what that value proposition is, how important this is. And then you can ask questions, about what's the financial impact of that. If they don't tell you a financial impact, you can say, and would you mind sharing with me what the financial impact of that would be? Have you considered that? Do you have a picture of that? Because you know what? They're going to tell you, and you're going to know, okay, they're saying the financial impact is $25,000. I know my package is 50. You know what? There's no, we are like that. They might identify that there isn't a big enough impact for them to move forward, no matter how much it is, right? But they might tell you what that impact is significant, and you are then able to say, okay, got it, thank you. So, what I know about my solution is that investment's going to, let's say they say, oh my gosh, $500,000. And I say, okay, great. So then if I can provide a solution for you that is a tenth of that, $50,000, does that investment feel like it's worth it if this is what the outcome's going to be? Right? It's not about price. It's about value. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I hope the listening audience caught that, because, oftentimes that's the first thing that we default to, because in actuality, we don't want to come to terms that it's us as a salesperson.
Right.
Oh no, it was the price. But like you said, we haven't made the connection with the price and the value. If you're able to deliver on that value and show what is the potentiality, what's going to happen to your business if you don't get it, right? What's the price you're going to pay for hiring an amateur, inexperienced person to doing it? Is going to be much higher than you would if you just hired a professional.
Right.
I hope everyone got that. I hope everyone got that. Listening. That's so important. Like, when I first started in business, these are things that you and I are talking about today, are things that, when you're first in there, you don't think that you need to know all these strategies. You don't know what you don't know. Right. But now it's like, if you're tuning in to this podcast right now, and you know for a fact, if you're in sales, well, we got a sales expert today. And she's right there on the screen. You can see her, and she's dropping some nuggets, some wisdom for you. So moving on, Diane, what I'm going to ask is, can you share some transformative stories, where a shift in your mindset or strategies led to a result that the client initially thought was unattainable? Like, they just thought, I hear you with this idea, but we're not there yet. We don't believe you for whatever reason.
Sure. So I will share one about networking, because networking is one of my, it is not about selling. Please stop. So I had a client who actually said to me, I don't like small talk. I'm going to these networking events so that I can find clients, and I just want to talk about what they need in relationship to what I do. And I said to him, okay, I just want you to try this. Like, let's just give this a shot. Because he wasn't getting what he wanted from these events that he was going to. They weren't resulting in the things that he wanted. And so it's like, okay, well, what you're doing isn't working. So how about if we try something else? I'm not talking about really engaging in small talk. I'm talking about really getting to know someone, learning something about them. So the next time you go to one, just ask open questions, something you'd be interested in, and see what happens. And he did. And he came back to me and he said, this really blew my mind. I went to this event. I didn't talk about my business at all. I was just engaging with people, learning about them. And 2 people with big companies said to me, you know what? I'd really like you to come in and talk to us about how you might be able to help us. Because he wasn't selling. I mean, interestingly, when you don't sell, that's when people can hear you. And that's when people want to engage with you. So
you said, when you don't sell, is when people can hear you.
That's right. That's right. That's when they're open.
All right. I had to write that down. You might want to turn that into a book. That's awesome, right? Because you think about it, like there's an old saying that says, "What you are is speaking so loud to me, I can't hear what you're saying."
Exactly.
Like the same idea. Yeah.
Exactly. And the other thing that I say is, and this is in every aspect of the sales process, the more you're talking, the less they're listening. So you think you're telling them all this stuff, and what I'm telling you is they're not listening to any of it. They stopped listening right after, when they realized you were trying to sell them something. So waste of time. So,
man, we all know that you're an expert, and if you're just tuning in right now, she is. I'm letting you know. She is a sales expert, but she talks about not selling. I know some people are like, what? But that's the art of selling, is not selling.
Yes.
But you are selling. So your book focuses on succeeding without the hard sell.
Yeah.
How does the psychology of soft selling leads to the same thing we were talking about, those sustainable and also profitable relationships?
So when we let go of selling in the traditional sense of the word, we have now shifted to connecting solutions to problems. And that's what people want. Anyone you're going to talk to about your product or service, they potentially have a problem that they are looking for a solution, right? They don't want to be sold. So when you approach with, let me learn about your situation, I'm not saying I can help you. I don't know whether but could we have a conversation? It takes those walls down. It brings the temperature down. They know they're not being sold to. So now you're having a conversation, you're engaging, you're learning as much as you can. They're sharing as much as they can. And you're just like walking together toward a final decision that both of you are making about whether it makes sense to work together. As you do that, you are building trust. You are building this relationship. You have to continue to do it even after the sale. But I will tell you something else. If you determine that this is not good for you and not good for them, and you tell them that, you won't do business with them directly, but they will refer you to other people because you have established that level of trust. So it is sustainable. It is win-win. It is great for everybody.
And this is the book below, guys. Succeed Without Selling. Get it on. She has it on Amazon. So go ahead and get that book. Hey, I'm making a plug for it because at the end of the day, if you really want to learn how to be successful in your business, it's just not rhetoric that we're talking here. These are tactics and strategies that she's implemented, right? And I'm just got to edify you here because just in case, you got a couple of books out, but Newsweek, she's been on Newsweek in 2002. These are all the people that says she's the sugar honey iced tea, and she is. And I'm being serious because sales is so important. Like some people believe, wholeheartedly, there's two types of people in this world: creators and sellers. And if you ask them who's more important, they're gonna say sellers. So you have to understand the art, because even if you're not selling, quote unquote, a product or a service, they always say you're always selling something. You're selling yourself every single day. Are people going to believe you when you're selling yourself? So identifying, understanding doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Sometimes we want to think it's what I believe. You can believe that gravity. If you're tuning in right now, you can believe that gravity doesn't exist. But if you go to a tall building and decide to leap off, you're going to find out in reality it does exist. So it's this idea of it doesn't matter if you don't understand what we're talking about today. Yeah. If you don't understand what we're talking about today, go ahead and grab a book. Go ahead and grab the book. We got two of them, actually. But Succeed Without Selling. I don't know if you want to talk about the other one. Do you want to talk about that, Diane?
The other one is just 10 episodes from my podcast. 10 of the most listened to episodes at the time from my
Expert
podcast.
Insights? Is that the Expert Insights? Okay.
Yeah. So,
and I mean that in itself, and I'm going to talk about that a little later. Your podcast is like a freaking what do you call it? A master class, So you've done a lot. You've done a lot of work to solidify yourself as an expert, and to me, I call it being humble. To me, giving back and like, hey, I'm sharing this insight. I'm sharing these strategies with people to let them know, like, hey, this is some of the pitfalls that I've had. And if you're trying to have a successful business and you're trying to spare yourself some of those pains, this is some of the things that you may want to do. So I really like that idea.
Thank you.
The next thing I want to ask you is we talked about your book. So let's talk about the podcast a little bit. Your podcast episodes are highly engaging. What psychological principles do you employ to keep your audience not just listening, but to also take action?
So what I know is people want to learn. They want to be able to take nuggets of information. You can't overwhelm them. And it's easier when it's conversational. So that has been my goal with the podcast has always been to interview people of expertise like you do. Let them share that expertise with listeners. So the listeners, because what they're going to do is they're going to take what they need when they need it. And as long as that information is evergreen, doesn't go out of style, is really based in solid foundations, they can listen whenever, wherever, and really whenever it's valuable to them, whenever they need it. And they're going to hear from people other than me, tell them the things that a lot of times they're also hearing from me. So it's confirmation. But I learn a lot too. So I think that, and the feedback that I've gotten from the listeners is that's what they really like about it. It's conversational. It's not salesy. It's actionable, nuggets of information. So that's what we do, like you do.
Okay. Yeah. So in today's digital age, how do you leverage the social proof and community building, networking, all those different strategies, social media strategy, without like you said, that salesy approach. But you know, to me, it's always giving value. If you give value, give value. Like that's one thing. If I don't understand anything else, I have this idea of like, as long as I'm giving value, eventually I'm gonna make a sale.
Right.
I've got to keep giving value to people. Like, why are you listening to this podcast? Because it's giving you value. I'm not saying, yeah, go and, you know, get into bed with us at Cerebral AI, you know, use our services, use our technology, use our platform. Is this idea, well, this podcast is brought to you by Cerebral AI. If you want to go check it out, go ahead. But we're trying to bring you value to let you know, hey, we're not just services here. We actually care about your business. We're bringing experts to this platform to inform you, to help you to make the right sales decision, right marketing decisions, the right leadership decisions, so that you can succeed in your business.
Right.
So, you know, so what do you think about that?
Yeah. So I totally agree. I'm so with you on that. I think it's about building trust and comfort. And so what I believe a couple of things. I believe I have a lot of information to share. I want people to, as I said at the beginning, behave better so they get the results that they want. So the more information I can give them in whatever way I can give it to them, I'm going to do it. I believe that I'm going to work with the people who I'm supposed to work with. So, and not the people who I'm not. So it isn't about me trying to convince anybody of anything. And here's the other thing, that when I network, I go into it with the belief that no one in the room needs what I have. Okay. And the reason that I do that is because then I am completely 100% me. I'm not thinking about a pitch. I'm not thinking about, you know, that 30-second thing, whatever. I'm just me, because people do business with people. So I don't want to be in a sales mindset. I don't want to be, you know, having that thing everyone can smell. I want to enjoy myself. I want to connect with the people who I'm supposed to connect with. I want to be able to really pick up on the signals that are going on in the room. And I got to tell you something, everything we've talked about today, it's more comfortable, it's more natural, it's easier, and it's more enjoyable for you and everyone who you come in contact with.
That's powerful. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that. Like, you know, like it's almost like going into a business meeting or a conference, or, you know, we have there's what is it, meetup.com. They have like wind down Wednesdays. And I swear I went to one event and someone really had some real strong perfume or cologne on. The cheap stuff, you know, like Dollar Tree stuff. And they went heavy with it, right? And it's that idea, what you just said, is like, when you come into a situation, being all salesy, is like wearing that strong Dollar Tree cologne, baby. You know, everyone's smelling you. And they're like, you know, stay away from me. Like, it's giving me a headache, you know.
Yes.
I know that's a weird example, though. That's a weird
example. That's a great example. I mean, I can feel that example. And it's so ridiculous. Like, why are people doing these things? They're leaving. They're not getting the result they want. And you said something earlier, that they're not owning it, that they're blaming other people or other situations, whatever. And they're not owning that it's how they're showing up.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Stop.
Yeah. Oh, we're having fun here. We're having fun. So if you're just tuning in right now, we're talking to Diane Hellbig. She is a transformational leader. She helps people discover their true identity when it comes to sales, and teaches you not to make the hard sell, to go in there with building sustainable relationships, that those things are going to help you grow your organization instead of just making one sale and going to the next. Yes. So the next thing, and I'm trying to make sure we don't run out of time here. So Diane's top 3 actionable steps for listeners, right? So 3 actionable steps you can give to our listeners. What are some of those hacks that listeners that's listening to the show today can implement to see a change in their sales and leadership approach when they get into these situations?
Okay. The first one is, the next time you go to a networking event, walk up to only plan on meeting one or two people. Walk up to someone you haven't met, say, I don't believe we've met. Tell me your story. And then be quiet. It's not for you to be talking. It's for you to be listening and learning. Okay? Just try it. Just give it a shot. The second one is when you are doing your prospecting research, if you're doing it on LinkedIn, don't connect with people and then try and sell them. Don't pitch them. It's terrible. People hate it. So you are seeking the meeting, not the sale. No matter what you're doing, no matter what's going on, that should be your goal, is just to have a conversation. And the third one is when you are in that sales appointment, ask a lot of questions and don't let them go. So if you ask about budget and they won't tell you, you cannot move on until you have more of a conversation about that, because that's one of the key elements of determining whether you have a solution for them. And so if you're the person who then you don't get that answer, you go and propose, and then they say, oh, this is way out of my budget, it's because you didn't go there with them. Be willing to have those conversations. And there's a lot of questions that you should be asking that many people are not. So those would be my three.
All right. So what would you say out of what you just said, what would you say would be what are some questions that you know for a fact that a lot of entrepreneurs are not asking that should be asking every time they meet with a prospective person?
Okay. Would you mind sharing with me your decision-making process? How will you be making this decision is one. Have you considered a budget for this is another. It's a yes or no question, but it leads you to the next question. Have you worked with a company like ours before? Would you mind sharing what your experience was? Okay. If they've worked with a company like yours before, they have a budget in mind also. I mean, that's another, would you mind sharing with me? Now you'll notice when I'm asking these questions, I'm saying, would you mind sharing? Okay. So, and the way that I'm asking the questions is very specific. There are the two questions I mentioned before. What will it do for you when you move forward with this? And what will the impact be if you don't? Those are critical and nobody's asking them. And you can ask, what's your timeline? What's your sense of urgency on this? Those are some of the biggest that people don't ask. They're so focused on what the thing is that they're not really how do you problem solve? I mean, as another one, would you mind sharing with me a situation where you had a conflict with a client or with a vendor and how it got resolved? What does success look like? How will we know that we've been successful here? How do you like to be communicated with? It's probably a lot more, but those are good.
All right. So, you remember the book, The 48 Laws of Power, correct? Have you? Okay. So how would you say one can navigate? Because some people would say, well, if you're not being direct and you're being indirect with this and you're saying don't sell. And so the question then is, how do you navigate the fine line between persuasion and manipulation in sales? How are you defining those two without,
Yeah. So, you know what? Let go of persuasion and manipulation. You can't persuade anybody. You can't convince anybody to buy your product or service. People are going to buy from you when they trust you and they need what it is you're offering. So your job is to build trust. And the way you build trust is by caring about the other person more than yourself, by caring about their business more than you care about needing to hit your mortgage. I know it, it feels seriously, and I know it feels sort of weird, but sales is not about selling. This is why I say succeed without selling. The more you think about selling, the less you're going to sell. Get curious. Embrace the idea of curiosity. Okay. In my book, I talk about how the ABCs of sales used to be always be closing, which is so awful. It is so awful. Because then you're always in sales mindset. You're like a shark looking for dinner. It is really always be curious. Because if you go into every aspect of the sales process with curiosity, you are going to learn an awful lot. You're going to build trust, and you and the prospect are both going to decide whether it makes sense to move forward or not. Because that's the other thing that salespeople don't realize. Sometimes they need to walk away.
Mm.
You know, sometimes they need to say, I'm not the best solution for you.
Mm. Yeah, and I agree with you on that. I just recently had a situation with the prospect that I was trying to help them out, and it initially, I mean, this sale, and like, I believe in cultivating relationships, but at the same time, at some point, you got to know when to pull the cord.
Right.
We've been working out this at about 6 months. Guy wants me to call him, 10 o'clock at night when he's done for the day. And, I'm hearing all these long stories, and I'm trying to understand them better. And, that's a part of it. But it finally came to a head last week. It came to a head. And I told him, I said, maybe you tell me if I'm wrong, because, I'm trying to cultivate this thing in this relationship. And I saw an opportunity because, I'm not your average salesperson. I'm just like you, where I really care about people. Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, I take the old Art Williams approach. Like, if you do bad business or you're a bad person, eventually people are going to smell you out for who you are. It's just a matter of time. Either you're going to stand on certain principles, and that's who I am. But some people will test the boundaries and the limits of you being nice, or being helpful as well. So can you, shed a little light on how much to push being helpful to the point is like you're being taken advantage of and you're not going to make a sale? Like, they can do it, but most likely they won't. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So you have to know your boundaries, right? You have to be able to say, I need to learn more than I talk. So when you have a prospect who's asking you about how you would go about, like, if you really feel like they're trying to get all the information without paying, that's what you're talking about. Right?
Yeah.
You just need to remember that your job is not to be talking. Your job is to be asking and listening. So I'll tell you, this is one of the most valuable things about being curious first and most is you'll pick up on those signals much faster, and you will realize that something it's not going right. And you're going to get that creepy feeling where, boy, this person I'm not feeling it. And when you're not feeling it, walk away. Okay. So when we're in sales mode, when we're in convincing mode, when we're in persuasion mode, we feel like, okay, whatever they ask me, I'm going to answer. I'm going to show my expertise. I'm going to show them that I care. I'm going to show them blah, 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 blah. And we spend all this time and months, right?
Yeah.
I know people who have spent years and they've given away everything and they've gotten absolutely nothing from it. They were never going to get anything from it. That person was never going to buy from them. But they spent all that time and investment, and the person just took the information and went to someone else because they were so in sales mode, they weren't paying attention to that's what was happening, right? You have to be in the moment. You have to be in the room, really, and paying attention to all of the signals that you are getting. And you do not want all the business. You want all the right business. The way you're going to get all the right business is by paying attention so that you can see where it feels right. It feels good. I said before, I'm not right for everybody. I know I'm not. And everyone isn't right for me. And that's okay. The sooner you can figure that out, the better it is for everybody.
I like that. All the right business. All business is not good business. The right business. And that goes kind of what you were talking goes right into the next question, because we're talking about emotional intelligence, and that directly talks about self-awareness. I'm aware of my emotions. I'm aware of how I'm making others feel. I'm aware of how they're feeling, all those things. So I guess the question is, what role does emotional intelligence play in your sales approach, and how can, one develop this skill to improve their sales performance?
Yeah, I think emotional intelligence is huge in the sales approach. So you're absolutely right. It's self-awareness. I gotta know how I show up. Self-regulation. I gotta know how good I am at regulating myself in certain situations, right? Like I teach emotional intelligence a lot, and I will say, I'm very self-aware. I'm one of the most self-aware people on the planet. Am I one of the best self-regulators? Not always. And I know that's how self-aware I am. I know I'm not. I know there are certain things that trigger me. We have to know that, because think about it. I'm about to walk into a sales conversation. I need to know what could potentially trigger me so I can be prepared for it. This approach allows you to really be prepared for whatever's going to happen. Social skills is part of emotional intelligence. How good am I at interacting with other people, at engaging with other people, about understanding how they're showing up and what's going up? That's a lot of what I'm talking about. Ask enough questions so that you can really understand them. And if they don't want to give you the answer, ask them what that's about. You know, help me understand what I'm feeling resistance here. Okay. Know what your motivators are, because if your motivator is, I need to pay the rent, it's the wrong motivator for walking into that conversation. Bam. Okay. And empathy, when we are doing what I'm talking about and being very curious and listening and in the moment and paying attention, we're hearing where they are, and we can be empathetic with it, being able to say, I hear that, right? Empathy isn't about agreeing with people. It's about acknowledging where they are. That's what we need to do as salespeople. We need to be able to meet them where they are and identify, does it make sense for us to be moving forward with this? So I think that's huge.
I agree with you. So that goes right into the next one. Like, how in the world do you handle objections in sales? And there's so many of them. From your sales standpoint, from what you know, your experience, is there a method to turn objections into opportunities?
I love this question. Objections are one of my favorite topics, because if you do what I'm talking about, there will not be any objections. This is how we get rid of them. Because think about it for a minute. If I'm asking questions and I'm listening to the answers and I'm responding to what I'm hearing, and I'm asking all of the relevant questions, the budget, and I'm not letting go of them. So I hear everything. If I then believe that I have a solution and I present my solution and say, this is what I heard, this is what I think I heard you say, this is the situation, this is the goal, here's how we can help you solve that, and here's what the investment is, there's no objection, because we're both going in the same direction, right? We have objections. We get objections when we don't learn enough information to be able to respond effectively to what they're telling us. We get objections when we ask the questions, get the information, and we provide a solution that is insufficient for what we heard, right? But if we do what I'm talking about, both of us at the end of the conversation are going to agree that we should move forward together or we shouldn't.
Absolutely. So, it goes back into, and it kind of, you kind of touched bases on this earlier, but I kind of want to touch it again, because, a lot of these things, people got to hear them more than one time. So I encourage anyone that's listening to this, if you miss something, you're lost, rewind it back and look at it again, because, we're moving on. We're going to talking about the concept of value-based selling, right? And how understanding a client's psychological profile and what that means, right, can help in articulating a value effectively of what you're trying to sell. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. It's all about value. If they don't see the value, it is exactly what we were talking about before. If they don't see the value in what you're offering them, it doesn't matter what the investment is, they're not going to make it. They're going to walk away. They're going to say they have to think about it. They're going to do whatever. Salespeople need to understand that their job is to learn as much as they can about their prospect as a human, right? I mean, there's a lot of things. There's who are they as a human, what motivates them, what worries them, what challenges them, all of those, what makes them thrilled, all of those things. They have to understand them as a human. They have to understand what the problem is, and really what the problem is, and what a solution looks like to the prospect, right? How are they seeing this? And then they have to understand the organization or the person, depending on who you're selling to, and how they make decisions, how they handle problems, how they deal with conflict, all of those things about that person, because all of that goes into a successful business relationship. I need to know the answers to things so I can identify, can I actually bring that value that you're looking for? It's not about the transaction. It's not about the thing. It's about the result that the thing provides. Right? I mean, does that make sense? It's not, I have this program, good for you, but what's the end result of the program? What's it going to do for me? That's what people care about. That's what they're interested in.
And I think that's so important. I had a talk about that the other day. It was the idea of creating products because you think that's what the client wants instead of going to the client and finding out. And that's the whole premise of what you've been talking about today. Is connect with the client. Everything's going to be different and tailor made for that particular client. So you can't just go in there with this template. Don't care what the internet's telling you. Don't care what some of these fake gurus are not making money. They're making money off of selling you the idea of buying their course. But they haven't been successful in real business. And that's the funny. That's the punchline. It's crazy. Like I see so many people that have absolutely done nothing, but they're a guru, and I'm like, you haven't wrote a book about nothing. You just one day you showed up and say, hey, I know everything about sales. I never made a sale. I never had a lick of success, but I'm a guru now. I'm like, what? So listen, we're not. So that's what I like about you. That's why you're on the show. I pride myself on this platform to start thinking forward shows. Like thinking forward is about real talk for real people. It's about having these educated, profound conversations, but coming to that realization, being humble and saying, listen, I'm a real person just like you. Yeah, I may be a little further down the road than you, but a lot of the problems you're facing, I faced it, but I was able to overcome. Here's some advice, here's some nuggets, take it and move on, right?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just tuning in, I'm talking to Diane Hellbig, and we're getting ready to wrap it up. So we got one more question. She has an important meeting to go to after this, and we want to keep holding her up. So we're getting ready to pass that hour. So if we can get one more from you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
All right.
Yep.
So the question I have for you is, in your experience, what are some common barriers that salespeople oftentimes face, and how they can overcome them when it comes to this sales psychology, this soft selling instead of this hard selling approach?
Yeah. So one of the things that I see that is a huge common psychological barrier for salespeople and small business owners is they think when someone says no, that it's a direct reflection on them. And what I always say is they don't know you well enough to know whether you're a good or bad person. They're not saying no, they don't like you. They're saying no, not now. I don't need it. I don't want to talk to you. So salespeople have to get over this fear of outreach, like fear of cold calling. At some point, you're going to have to do it, right? So, because you have to be taking these actions. Part of the reason why I like my process is because the more research you do, the easier it is to do the outreach, because you have something to talk to them about. So set yourself up for success, right? When you follow this, and don't be real salesy. Don't use those words that signal to the person that you're about to try and sell them something, right? This is why I said before, seek the meeting. Well, I was very successful when I was in, sales, when I was a salesperson, because I would say to people, I don't know whether I can help you or not. Is it worth a conversation? I'll let you know. At the end of the conversation, I'll let you know whether I think our product can help you or not. Okay. So it was easy for me to have that. And let me tell you what, I had people say to me, no, it isn't. And I sold something that saved people 40% every time they bought it. And I still had people say, no, it's not worth having that conversation. That has nothing to do with me. That has to do with them. Right. So we have to remember that people are reacting and responding to us based on who they are, not on who we are. They don't know us. Let it go. Okay. So that's a big one. The other one is that I encounter so many salespeople and small business owners who don't want to be salesy. They don't want to feel like they are being slimy, sleazy, pushy, whatever. And what I say is, great, don't. Let it go. Do what I'm talking about. You won't feel any of those things because you'll just be being you, genuinely interested in other people, and that will take care of itself. That's why I said before, more enjoyable, easier, more comfortable.
Exactly. Woo! All I can say is, what a ride that was. And I mean, if you're listening in and your mind isn't spinning, or maybe you missed some things, go back, rewind, look at this episode. A huge thank you to you, Diane, for gracing us, with your wisdom and insight today.
Yeah.
You're definitely an oracle when it comes to sales. Like, you really know and have great insight. Now, if you're pumped up as we are with implementing Diane's tailor-made strategy, just don't sit there. Grab your notepad. I hope you've been taking notes. But most importantly, what we want you to do is go check out her book, Succeeding Without Selling. And on top of that, once you check that out, we want you to go to her website and schedule a free consultation. So I think one of the best things, is to take actions. Like, if you're sitting on the fence right now, you're trying to figure out what's your next move, right? What's wrong with getting a free consultation to find out? And as you see here, she's very open and transparent, and will be teaching you, if you decide to work with her, the concepts and ideas you need to be successful. And that's what the Start Thinking Forward brand is about. And that's what the Cerebral AI is about as well. We want to make sure that we're empowering you for the future. Diane, do you have any closing? Before we go to there. So the question that the last guest asked was, how important is it for you to be remembered, and what would you want to be remembered for?
Well, how important is it for me to be remembered? It's more important for me to make an impact. Honestly, what I want to be remembered for is raising two incredible humans who contribute to society in a positive way and are leaving their own legacy. So that's that.
And what
mom first?
Mom first. And what question would you leave to the next guest yourself?
What question would I leave for the next guest? I would want to ask them, how are they giving back to the world?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Woo! All right, Diane, I appreciate you. Hey, a lot of people, for the longest, when I always do the woo, and it really comes from Ric Flair, right? But originally, when I was in sales, it was his idea. They actually had Ric Flair to come out to visit us one time, and he gave his whole speech and everything. And it's always, Ric Flair always started off. He's like, how you start is how you finish. So when he would come out and woo and all, it would just give him a level of excitement. Like, hey, we start off excited, we're gonna end excited, and it's something I've been doing for years.
Really?
Like, everyone that knows me, I'm like, every time I'm like, woo, what's going on, brother? What's going on? Like, and then like it's become a part of me. I start everything with a woo. So I'm like, I don't want you to think I'm crazy. I ain't like, why is he
I
always
don't think he's crazy at all.
I'm just excited about life. I'm excited about having you here. I'm just excited that I'm able to connect with people like yourself that actually is offering great, insightful information. And, just being honest and upfront, so much stuff online right now, the saying, oh, this is perfect life and you do these 3 steps, and that's not real. Like when you live in a real world, like that stuff to sell, that's exactly what they're trying to sell you on their idea that they got it figured out. But here you're being transparent, you're opening up, you're saying, hey, reach out to me. I'm gonna put that back on the screen. Because I just want to just, keep on edifying you, because it's just what you've done is just awesome. Go check out Succeed Without Selling, right? The more you think about selling, the less you will sell.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the bottom line. I mean, that's what you've been driving home the whole time. Yeah. Other than that, Diane, do you have any parting words to leave the audience before we sign out?
I just appreciate you. I have to tell you, this has been so enjoyable, and I love the just the way you engage and your research. Like everything that you're doing here is really awesome. Thank you for doing this for people.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you for giving me the time, your time and opportunity. I mean, I haven't. I mean, if I go back here, I mean, I haven't been on Newsweek. I haven't been a Newsweek member, but hopefully one day I will. But I'm excited to have you here, because you're an expert and you really know what you're talking about. And I believe it's going to really help a lot of people solidify a lot of the key decisions that they're going to have to make in their business. So I applaud you. I'm glad to have you here to be a part of the Start Thinking Forward family. So Diane, you're inducted into the Hall of Fame here. So hopefully we could definitely. I don't know if you got any new books coming out, or any projects, or any events coming out. We definitely would like to have you back on the show before that to kind of promote that for you. So just let us know.
I'll let you know. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And guys, thank you for tuning in to Start Thinking Forward show. And until next time, remember, keep thinking forward.